Welcome back to Logistics Without the Drama. Today's drama that we are going to talk about is the drama of technology and of AI specifically. It is conference season in the Gulf Coast for the chemicals, and everybody is preparing to attend all of these lecture series and conferences and speak with their colleagues and partners. And AI is such a hot topic. So I'm thrilled today to have Nick on with us. He is the co-founder of Markham Square, which is a boutique firm that creates custom AI solutions for different companies based on their needs and has been operating since 2022. And he and his co-founder, Matt, have been also co-hosting Technically Lit, so podcast teaching coding to designers, correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit, how did you get into this?
Yeah. Oh, goodness. So we're going back. So I got out of college. I had an econ degree and I was like, I'm going to go work for a bank. And then I realized how hard that is. So I started working with some startups. Basically, I was doing their accounting. We were a technology startup. So I got into basically coding, taught myself how to code, got into design, how to like bring things to life. And I loved it. I was just kind of like, this is for me. I'm going to run with this. And that was, oh goodness, like 15 years ago now. So,
wow.
So here we are.
Taught yourself to code. That's impressive.
Yeah, well, it was easier then. There was less to know. But nowadays, it's a hard job. So.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep up with.
Yep.
I'm glad that you feel the same way, because I absolutely feel like it is so much to keep up with. I don't even know where to start some days, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's a new, especially in technology, there's a new piece of software coming out. There's a new product. There's a new language coming out. So lots of change.
Yeah, absolutely. Digitalization, though, has been a topic for decades, right? Mm-hmm. I think every conference I've ever been to surrounding logistics specifically, but really I'm sure others, sectors are the same, has been the digitalization. And when will digitalization efforts meet our needs? And how are we better tracking our cargo? And it's just adding in these new tools every time the conversation regenerates. And how can companies solve these problems? Because obviously, all these decades is still not solved, right?
Right. Yeah, we're still talking about it, right? Absolutely. So I think where companies struggle, right, is, or the way we like to break it down, there's sort of like an operational maturity spectrum, and then there's a technology maturity spectrum. Mm-hmm. And you can typically like do a nice little quadrant graph of those two axes, right? And most companies will find themselves in one of those four kind of buckets. Either you have low operational maturity, high operational maturity, and then low technology maturity and high technology maturity, right? And everyone kind of thinks they're in the upper right quadrant, like, oh, we're the best at both metrics. And sadly, that's not often the case for most companies. And so it really helps, though, to kind of have that sort of reflection and kind of understand, okay, where are we lacking? Is it on the operational side? Is it on the technology side? Often it's some combination of both. And then from there, you can have a much more productive conversation of, okay, we're kind of a little operationally lacking here. We need to get better at understanding what our process is. How have we mapped all this out? And then we can start thinking about the technology, because that has to come first. You don't understand the operations of the business. As much technology as you want is not going to solve the problem, right? And then if it's like, okay, we've got that pretty figured out, we're not so technology mature, okay, let's upgrade those capabilities. And now all of a sudden we're working with a really mature organization that can take advantage of all of these new advances.
So when you say operationally mature, what exactly is the definition, or how are you defining maturity within your operations? Is it that my operations are super efficient, or is it that I have them mapped and I understand what the process is supposed to be?
Yeah, definitely a combination of both, right? But it starts with the mapping. It starts with the understanding, because, well, at least we found it's really hard to be efficient if you don't understand what you're even working with to begin with, right? Yeah. So it's, do we have standard operating procedures? Do we have process diagrams of everything that's happening in our business? And for small organizations who probably don't have all this, or have a team that can think about this stuff, it's like, do we know the customer journey? Do we know, how do we take somebody from coming in the door, or even before that, how do we get them in the door, all the way to them being a happy, satisfied customer? Yeah. And what are all the steps in between that? And then thinking through all the steps, okay, what are all the touch points? What are all the technologies that they're interacting with here? And how can we have a really complete single pane of glass picture for what that looks like for us?
So first step, if somebody's even starting out thinking about, maybe we need more technology, maybe we need something else digitalized, the first step is to do the mapping of your processes, right? That you can't really understand where the tech comes in. And for a company that maybe has never done that, that seems overwhelming, right? And
absolutely.
Especially if you talk about logistics. I mean, logistics evolution over time. You hear, we used to handwrite all of these things, handwrite bills of lading. We used to telex releases, we used to do all of these older things. And a lot of people that have been in the industry a long time, hold on to these things
Mhm.
very closely because this is how I know that I am efficient and how I
Mhm.
can work. So their process is their process and it's a secret and it's kind of archaic. And then you have your executives coming in going,
Mhm.
we have to digitalize.
Right. Yeah.
And so helping, I think, companies do that is really important, but
Mhm.
also understanding, I think you kind of mentioned what problems are we trying to solve? You know,
Mhm.
if you don't know what your process is, you don't know where the problems are. What are some of the things that you have experienced that people are trying to solve with technology? Is it
Mhm.
always efficiency? Is it always a profit gain to be able to do more with less? I
Mhm.
mean, that is what everyone wants to do
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
with less these
Well,
days. It's
yeah.
not even an option.
Right. Right. That's certainly like the big focus for everybody, but there's also a lot you can do with technology to make people's life easier, make it more convenient, especially
Hmm.
like internally. And that doesn't always ladder up to like a revenue number, but if you can make your team feel more productive or feel like they're getting more done or just increase like the psychological safety on the team, like
Yeah.
you can really unlock a lot of productivity that you wouldn't have done the math out like 2 + 2 = 4 for our
Right.
revenue numbers here, but actually has like outsized impact that you wouldn't necessarily be thinking about. So I just think like this week here, we put together like an analytics dashboard for one of our clients that they didn't necessarily ask for. We had just been listening to them and kind of saying like, you're doing like portfolio analysis. You probably need to understand what the distribution, they're in insurance, so they want to understand the distribution of risk in their
Hmm.
portfolio. And we said, well, we have the data here. Let's just put together some histograms so you can kind of just see for the portfolio what the distribution composition looks
Hmm.
like. That wasn't something that ladders up to a revenue number or increases their underwriting efficiency, but we were able to give them this report. And now all of a sudden they're like, oh my goodness, I can see everything that I'm talking about here, all these
Yeah.
numbers. And now I can make more informed decisions, which long term is going to benefit the
Oh, yeah.
business, right?
Visibility is critical. You can't
Hmm.
steer your business if you can't see it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
like where are you going to go?
Hmm.
No, I think that is a really good point too, that that's not a direct increase in revenue or increase in profit or even increase in efficiency unless they're trying to pull the numbers manually,
Right.
but absolutely critical to steer the business in the right
Hmm.
direction. So
Right.
that's a really good example.
Hmm.
What kind of problems can technology not solve though? I
Yeah.
mean,
Tons.
yeah.
There's so many problems. And it kind of comes back to your earlier point of you have those folks in the organization who are used to doing things one
Hmm.
way, and you feel like they're stuck in their ways. And executives are coming top down and saying, "We got to do all this digital stuff." Technology can't solve that problem, right? That's a very
Yeah.
human problem. And I think a lot of that starts with like co-creation and
Hmm.
kind of going to those individuals who might be a little stuck or who, just are comfortable with the way of doing things. That's
Yeah.
very natural. Like that's a human response. And so a lot of times it's my way or the highway with the executive approach, but really going to those people, understanding how they work today and saying like, oh, okay, you've got to build trust with them. So that
Hmm.
way they trust that whatever it is coming down the pipeline is going to actually benefit their life. So anything you can do to like immediately show them, oh, okay, this is a benefit or this is
Hmm.
something that can improve my life is a huge win. And
Right.
oftentimes that's not technology. That's just like, hey, your meeting minutes are never reviewed. So you feel like you're doing all this wasted effort
Hmm.
putting together meeting minutes. I'm going to review them. I'm going to look at them and call them out in 2 weeks from now and say, hey, I noticed you logged this in the meeting minutes. Thank you for doing that. Here's what I'm thinking about because of that. That's not a technology solution. That's
Yeah.
just kind of recognizing the work that they're doing and building that rapport, building that trust, right? And so for me, I think there are like human problems, there are process problems, and then there are technology problems. And oftentimes we just go straight for the technology. We forget about the other two.
Yeah.
And there's so much you can do just there that makes a business just infinitely more productive.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And it kind of is a nod to what you mentioned about psychological safety earlier, where the
Hmm.
executives can be providing a better psychological safety to
Hmm.
the teams. But you mentioned it in the way that technology can provide psychological safety. I've never correlated the two.
Hmm.
How can that provide psychological safety from a technology
Yeah.
standpoint?
I think a lot of fear in technology is like, if we do something, we're going to break something, right? So, with a lot of the work that we try to do is have like systems and processes and best practices in place so we can experiment, so
Hmm.
we can try new things. And if something does break, it's not catastrophic to the rest of the business.
Got it.
So when we're doing rollouts or we're doing new initiatives, we often have what's called a staging environment
Hmm.
or pre-production or beta environment where we can try things and it's not going to break what everybody is relying on to do their
Right.
day to day or the customer experience, right? And so that's one way that we use technology to say, listen, we're confident that this little playground that we have is not going to have downstream effects on the live experience.
Hmm.
Let's play here. Let's experiment with what if we did it this way because we have hopefully a good representation of the data that the business is using here and what the system looks like. So we can try new things here that we probably wouldn't try in production because we're trying to preserve that safety and that reliability there.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And you're right. That is really critical, not only to business success, but to the people who are doing the data entry and using those systems on a day-to-day. So that's
Mhm.
important.
Absolutely.
Why is it that executives or even middle management, even people if they're working in the operations day-to-day, why do they feel so much pressure to do something around AI and to add in these digital measures without knowing how it can help?
Yeah. I think a lot of this today is FOMO, right? It's fear that our competition is picking up all these new tools and learning how to use them, or new entrants are coming into the market. They're AI natives, and we're just not going to be able to compete with them because they're leveraging all these tools today.
Mm,
So, especially at the executive level, I think they're reading all these news stories coming out. They're probably seeing industry news talking about it. And there's this feeling of, we're not staying current. We're not keeping up. We're not the best of the best anymore. We got to do something about it, right?
right.
And so that's where, especially on the executive level, I see this happening a lot. I think folks who are a little bit more in the weeds, it's also fear, but it's the fear of like getting left behind because you're
Mm,
so focused on your day-to-day job. You've got a lot to do. You've got initiatives and tasks and things to get done that you can't even think about what are the possibilities that AI can do for me because you're so busy
right.
doing the job.
I
And
think we've
so,
all been
yeah,
there.
yeah, no, I know. I feel like that all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's a different kind of fear because you're so close to your job and what you're doing that you feel like things are happening above you and beyond you that you just can't keep track of.
Yeah.
And so that's where we have to talk to those two different audiences a little bit differently and kind of understand, okay, how can we make this more digestible, consumable, and also tailored? I think a lot of
Yeah.
this AI stuff is big picture or it works for one company, probably not applicable to another company. So how can you take this technology and really apply it
Right.
to the problems at hand for the business?
Interesting. That
Mhm.
is interesting. If you are looking at how to apply it or you use maybe a bigger picture or maybe even not a custom tool for you and you apply it wrong, what's the cost of that to an organization?
It can be big. It can be big. I think the biggest issue that we always worry about is data, right? If you
Yes. Oh
have
my gosh.
right, I have corrupted data or data that's been entered incorrectly or data that's just wrong, right?
Mhm.
That can be a huge time suck to fix. And
If you can
also,
fix it at
if you
all.
can fix it, right? And it's one of those things where if the core data set is wrong and you're making decisions based on assumptions on top of that,
Mhm.
your whole direction can be wrong, right?
Yeah.
Because you're just making the wrong choices because you don't have the right data there.
Right.
So for me, that's always the biggest risk whenever a new tool is coming to the stack or we're upgrading an existing tool. It's how do we preserve that
Mhm.
core data integrity? Otherwise, we could be in a whole mess.
Right. And that sounds scary. And if you are an executive or a decision maker within your company that
Mhm.
is looking at more technology, regardless of type of platform, how can you evaluate if it is going to add value or it's going to make more layers?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard. It's
Yeah.
a hard decision to make. So a lot of this comes back to that maturity assessment we were talking about
Okay.
earlier, right? Where if you are mature from a technology standpoint, you have all of your dependencies mapped out. You know what your technology stack is, you know what problem it's solving for you within your business. And so ideally, when you're bringing in a new tool, it's for a very specific reason. If
Okay.
you're reaching for a new tool and you're just kind of like, this thing is going to make our business better, that's probably not a great reason to be bringing it into
Yeah.
the environment versus you're like, we've got this one very specific problem. Nothing in our existing stack solves it, or they solve it suboptimally. We're bringing this in for this reason. That's a
Okay.
much better narrative, right?
So when you talk about stack,
Hmm.
describe that to
Yeah.
me a little bit, just as somebody who is a novice in this area.
Hmm.
Are you talking about just all of the programs and platforms somebody may have and is using? That
Hmm.
is that what you're referencing, or describe that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So every business today works with a bundle of technologies,
Yes.
right? Some very basics. If you're a small business, you're probably using like the Google suite, right, of tools. So you've got your Gmail, then you've got Google Drive, and
Mhm.
that's your core document processing part of your operation. Then you'll probably have some sort of payments system.
Mhm.
Then you've got to tie that into accounting systems. So you've got QuickBooks. All of a sudden, we're talking about four different pieces of technology, and then all those things have to play nice and map together.
Right.
And that just gets more complicated the larger you get. So you'll have your website that'll be on either a provider. If you're doing a lot of your own website development, then you're going to have your hosting provider, you're
Mhm.
going to have your web server, you're going to have your DNS domain stuff. All this stuff starts adding up very, very quickly. So the larger you get, the more custom development you're doing,
Mhm.
the more complicated your technology stack is going to get over time.
Oh, okay. That helps to look at it from a small business perspective
Yeah.
first,
Hmm.
because now I can correlate to a large organization. You've got your ERP, you've got
Hmm.
your CRM, you
Yep.
have your data warehousing, all
Hmm.
of these things
Yep.
then. and how are they working together? And if they're not working together, that in and of itself is a massive problem.
Yeah, huge.
That makes a lot of sense. AI is the hot button topic on everybody's plate, right? And I think there's a lot of confusion out there. And there is for me too. I mean, you hear all the buzzwords, all of the different platforms, all the different types of tools are available. And quite frankly, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, what is AI? And then what is AI not?
Yeah, that's a great question. So AI at the simplest level, it's just like a statistical matching engine, right? So that's like when you hear like large language model, like what is that? What is it doing? It's a really sophisticated statistical engine that can take unstructured input, so documents, chats, things like that, compare it against its training data, and then spit out the most likely response to your question, right? So it's doing all this vector mapping, it's doing all this probabilistic simulation to put out a good answer for you, right?
So it's using statistic probabilities in the background to determine likeliness.
Yeah, and this is like machine learning and data science and a couple other technologies that are under the hood, right? But that's what it is at its essence, right? So it's a really good, I don't want to say random number generator, but that's basically what it is, right? Under the hood. What it's not is a silver bullet, right? It's not a magic wand that you can just inject into any environment. It's like AI is going to fix and solve everything. But what it is a really powerful tool for what we call non-deterministic output. And so if you think of like an algorithm, it's very math oriented, right? It's like algebra at school. It's like A plus B is equal to 10, right? And you can figure out, oh, okay, 5 and 5 or 4 and 6, right? And you'll know you're going to get to 10 because you just need definitions for those values.
Okay.
Versus an LLM, A plus B could equal 10 tomorrow. It could be 12 on Tuesday. It could be a different number every single time because the output is not something that you can control ahead of time.
Okay.
And that's what makes it powerful. You can get a different answer every time. And so it can give you more flexible, dynamic responses than something like an algorithm, which is very 1 + 1 is 2.
In a business, is flexibility in response and dynamic output a good thing?
It can be. It can certainly be a very good thing. So I'll talk about a use case. So this week we're building an AI tool that would basically take a set of, we work in insurance this week, model runs. So we basically do a risk analysis on a potential solar site. We run a bunch of statistical models on it. And then we take that output and we need to sort of interpret it so we can create an underwriting report.
Okay.
So we're not making the underwriting decision with AI and we're not doing the raw calculations with AI either. We're just trying to ingest it and summarize it so an underwriter has a draft to work from as opposed to having to do all this heavy lifting and document massaging themselves. And that's very powerful, right? Because you're getting very different inputs into that model. You're getting different site data, you're getting different locations, you're getting different risk profiles and peril scores. And it's able to look at this and say, this is kind of an interesting set of data. These are the things that we think would be most interesting for you to take a look at. And it can surface those things. And an algorithm can't do that.
You're right.
It can't be like, oh, this is a variable set of information and we're going to give you different output based on that. And that's where an LLM can really shine and be a really productive, useful partner for you.
Okay. That's a really great use case scenario because in my mind, what a lot of people are thinking AI can do is basically automation, which is not the same thing, right? That's been around for a long time and that's very formulaic. That's if this happens, then this.
Sure.
But to digest data and understand what is valuable out of that data, that can't be done with automation.
Yep, exactly. And I think AI is certainly a piece of automation, right? You can build workflows now where you'll have an AI agent go in and maybe you need to use it for marketing purposes, right? So it can go and look up all the latest industry news for the day. It can sort of digest and synthesize that for you and then give you an update and say, hey, here are the trending topics. Here's what is most valuable for you as a business owner. And then you can take it a step further and say, do you want me to draft some marketing copy or can I make 20 Facebook posts for you and stuff like that? And it's good at those sort of creative pursuits, if you will, and be able to generate something that you can either use as a draft or you can continue to layer in additional automation on top of.
Okay. And so I think from a personal perspective, I see a lot of value, right? When you talk about it's digesting data and summarizing it, it's saving individuals a lot of time. So whether that's on a personal, I'm using it to help me in my job personally, or my company has invested to help my job on a process level. And there's also, though, a lot of fear around it for people. So that we talk about a whole different type of thought and type of work where people don't need that kind of help. One of the big news stories was several years ago, there was a longshoreman strike. And one of the topics was we don't want AI to take our jobs, right? This is what came out of all these news stories, right?
Yeah.
And there is a big fear on that. So where does AI actually replace labor and where does it augment it?
Yeah. I think the truthful answer is no one knows right now, right? I think we've got a lot of people experimenting with it, pushing the boundary. The models are changing so fast that on the frontier, it's really hard to be like, how much is this going to replace and what is it going to replace? What I see it replacing most for people, especially in the technology profession, is the rote output. So things like writing a lot of syntax, writing a lot of code, it's very good at that. It's very good at actually doing sort of that piecework of we're just going to sit here and put together solutions. What it's less good at, or where I see it being less of a replacement, more of a partner, is on the higher level architectural things where you still need a human to make decisions. Another area where I see it struggle is like doing things that are new, where you actually don't know what a good solution looks like. When we're working with AI, with technology, if I'm like, I need you to build this feature, it's got to have these requirements, it's got to be able to pass these tests. That's great, right? Because it has a way to check itself. It has a very descriptive understanding of what it needs to accomplish. And so it can go do that. When I'm saying like, I don't know exactly how we're going to solve this problem, I need to think through this from first principles and I need to architect a solution, it struggles there. It can be sort of a sounding board, but it's not something that I would just let loose and try to take a pass at it and try to solve it, because it has a harder time doing these sort of net new things. So that's where I can kind of see we're going to see the most advantages and most gains, probably in things that are very well defined, jobs and roles and tasks that are very discrete. It's going to be very helpful for. What it's going to be less helpful for is connecting the dots, putting the pieces together. And also anything that requires long-term memory. These models can only hold so many characters in their context at any given time. And that context breaks down. All the models have shown that over time, the longer you have a conversation with it, the worse it gets because it's trying to hold too much in its memory every single time. So that I think is where you're still going to have huge advantages for people.
So what I'm hearing though is in general, people shouldn't be afraid to lose their jobs. I mean, that this is really intended to do different things than strategic experts or long-term career people that have all of this niche knowledge that is the reason that they're successful at their jobs. And that's a good thing, right? That's relieving. It's relieving for me to hear. And so I'm sure it's relieving for others as well. But the push is real and the conversations are happening. And there is always a fear, and not just fear of change, but fear for your job and also the unknown, as you said, learning a fast moving topic, learning something that's constantly coming down. If someone is listening or watching this, they want to know more, they're totally overwhelmed, which I'm going to be honest, is kind of where I'm coming from. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. Where should they start? What can you recommend for people?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just trying to use it in your day-to-day life is going to be the best bet. Get yourself started with it. Open up ChatGPT, open up Claude with Anthropic, and just try to have that conversation. And also that maturity assessment we were talking about earlier, that works for you too, right? It works for individuals. So it's understanding, okay, where in my job or in my process, where are areas that I have it really understood, well documented, and try to bring AI there and say like, okay, can you help me with this step? Can you help me with this piece of the process here? And can I start connecting the dots? And then we're running these workshops now. So if you're Houston based, we can check out Learn AI Houston, because we want to help people kind of get these skills, because it is a new and emergent field, and help them understand, okay, this is how I can start applying AI in my context. So not a webinar or something like that, where you're kind of losing all the context for what makes it valuable for you. We really want to help people understand this is what it is and this is what it can do for me.
That's a really great offering. If I were to want to attend something like that, is it going to be at a level that I will understand? Because coming in, I don't know how it can help me, and I don't want to waste time. Anybody can attend, and it will
if you can turn on a computer, you can come. So
that's amazing. I think that would be valuable for a lot of people, because I need quick wins in my business. I need to do more with less. It's not even an option anymore. And I want to keep on top of the latest and greatest. And then I just need some guidance. So that I like that idea a lot. If there is one takeaway for people that you want to leave, that is a summary of the things we've discussed, all the fears, all of the potential, all of the new, what is that one takeaway you want to leave?
Yeah. So I think the big thing for me is AI is not a silver bullet, right? It's not going to come in and solve all of your problems. At the same time, it's an extremely powerful tool. And so when you have a really good understanding of your business and you can start thinking about, okay, this is where it's going to be powerful for me, that's the superpower, right? And so it's not just that AI is going to change the world, it's that AI can change your world if you know where to use it. And so that's, I think, the big takeaway for me is you can't just drop it in and hope for the best. You need to be very proactive and diligent and thoughtful about, okay, this is where it's going to do the most good for us.
I love that. That's a really great takeaway. And it starts with understanding your operational maturity, your technological maturity, and then being able to assess.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining today. Really appreciate a lot of good knowledge.
Thank you for having me. This was great.